find your footing, figure out where your business is headed, then really start to operationalize and invest in tools. It totally makes sense.
Hey everyone, this is Nazar Akil from Max Pro.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Paul.
And we're 11 Pebbles.
Hi, this is Lopa Vandermersch from Rasa.
Oh, you're listening.
And you're listening.
And you are listening to the E-Comm Show.
Welcome to the Ecomm Show, presented by BlueTuskr, the #1 place to hear the inside scoop from other e-commerce experts, where they share their secrets on how they scaled their business and are now living the dream. Now, here is your host, Andrew Maff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ecom Show. I'm your host, Andrew Maff, and today I'm joined by the amazing Parag Mamnani, founder and CEO of Webgility. Parag, how you doing? You ready for a good show?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you on the show. A lot of our listeners, I'm sure they know, I've been in Ecom for like 10, 15 years or something like that at this point, and Webgility has been there right by my side. You guys have been around for years. I know countless sellers that use you guys, your services, your platform. Obviously, you've just been like a staple in the industry, and obviously being the founder and CEO of that makes this whole conversation that much better. But even though that's clearly a fact, let's assume that people who are listening right now don't know anything about you or about Webgility. So why don't you kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis here?
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, I've been around a while. I've been in the e-commerce space. Personally, I've been in the space for over 2 decades now. Early days, started an agency building e-com websites and platforms that you might not have heard of anymore, like Xcart and OS Commerce. Early days, and then did
the classics.
Yes, exactly. And then did that. Got my hands on working with lots of really cool sellers. Early days, and then I joined Amazon. Ran a product there called Web Store, so it's an e-com platform. Think of it as their Shopify, which they then sort of divested later on, and then started Webgility. We're essentially an automation and intelligence platform for small businesses. So started early years with focusing on accounting, as you can tell, QuickBooks, right? So we do a lot of work with QuickBooks sellers, really helping them automate all of their business processes around QuickBooks. So whether it's sort of reconciling their books at the end of the month, figuring out how to do purchase orders, keeping their inventory and pricing in sync across all their channels. And over the last few years, we've invested heavily into kind of data and intelligence. So helping businesses really figure out what their profitability is like, right? Like what channel is performing, what SKUs performing, and how can they grow faster. And that's been a long journey. And yeah, been at it a little over 15 years now, but it's always fun. It's always a new challenge.
Nice. So I know, yeah, like you mentioned, I know you guys started, was it 2007, I think? When you guys kicked off?
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Nice. And so I know obviously you were focused on the accounting side. How deep outside of the financial have you guys gotten, or have you just really honed in on the financing side?
Yeah. So, listen, I think, I've had this question a few times, and something that most people sort of maybe don't recognize, but like your accounting and financial data, that system is likely the first and only system of record that every small business has. Is the only system that actually has true data about what's happening in your e-com business. Because it has your financials, what's the money coming in and what's the money going out. So for us, that's always been sort of the anchor and the epicenter of everything we do. But early days, our focus was really on, okay, how do we automate your closing books? Like, how do we get all of your e-com transactions into your QuickBooks? How do we make sure we know what your expenses and fees are? And we've grown over the years as really following our customers' lead, where they've come to us and said, okay, now you have access to my data. What more can you automate for me? So I have my inventory across all of my channels. How do I keep all of my channels in sync, right? I have pricing that I want to adjust across channels. I want to do listings on multiple channels. I want to expand to new channels. So over the years, we've added lots of capabilities, but QuickBooks and soon NetSuite are really kind of our sweet spots of where we focus. That growing, scaling, multi-channel e-commerce business that is spending so much time and effort in trying to reconcile their books, figuring out where they're making money, and in automating a lot of manual effort. So yeah, that's been sort of our focus. But yeah, QuickBooks and sort of accounting ERP does remain at the core of everything we do.
So, from our end, we do a lot of marketing here, obviously, because I'm like you, right? I'm still on the agency side. I'm waiting to figure out the platform so I can stop. But like when we do the marketing side, it really does amaze me how many sellers we end up working with that don't really have that kind of insight, right? Like, what are your actual cost of goods? What should at least from our perspective, what should your target ROI be? Or if from an Amazon perspective or any of these different marketplaces, they increase their fees. And like, I know there's another increase that Amazon's doing during just Q4. And like, so there's things like that. Do you have direct integrations with pretty much everything that kind of updates internally, or is that something that kind of, I'd imagine that's complicated because it comes with like different categories and stuff, but how does that whole process work?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I like to start by sort of just telling sellers that, so many tools out there and so many companies out there market everything is sort of e-commerce is easy. And I think, yeah, that is exactly sort of the opposite, right? Like e-commerce is hard. And in fact, the moment things get easier, sellers, various tools make it easier, then, the competition only rises. So
Yeah.
now, if you look at kind of a seller's e-commerce stack, I mean, we're talking an average of maybe 15 apps that they use to run their e-commerce business. And so the challenge is when you're looking at, say, your marketing aspects, you find a lot of tools out there that'll look at the marketing and be able to tell you, say, your return on your ad spend, because they're able to calculate, from your ad channel to the dollar you made in the order. But
Yeah.
you have to go all the way back to what's your actual cost of the items for you to know whether you made money on the order to begin with.
Yeah.
So, so I will say there's a reason I've been at this for over 15 years now, because it's a really hard problem to solve, right? You have to connect lots of channels, lots of systems, and they're constantly evolving. And it's a moving target because every platform we connect to is evolving their own APIs, making new data sets available, and we have to constantly adapt to that. So I'd love to tell you we integrate with everything, but we don't yet. It's it's a work in
Yeah.
progress. But we do. Today we connect to all the major marketplaces. We connect to your accounting platform. We connect to your shipping app. We connect to your payment solution. We've added now connectivity to your ad platforms. We're actually doing a lot more on the marketing side here coming up in Q4.
Oh,
But our ultimate sort of nirvana for us is, can we get the seller to see what is their profitability at a channel and at a SKU level? Like if you could tell every single SKU which was profitable, which order was profitable, which channels are profitable, now you have the true power of really figuring out where to put more dollars to work and where to throttle back. And oftentimes those decisions are being made not based on where you're making money, but kind of maybe where you're seeing a lot of volume. And
yeah.
and that's not that's maybe one strategy that really works. But getting a sense of your financial data, I think, is real key. And frankly, that's the recipe for growth, because you can find a lot of tools out there. Most sellers will have access to those tools that can fine tune your pricing, that can fine tune your competitive score and keywords and optimize them. And I'm not saying those are not great tools. They're actually really, really powerful. But once that playing field is leveled, what's next? How do you actually know what's profitable so that you
Hmm.
can, kind of get that competitive edge and get ahead?
Profitable is such an interesting like concept, which it shouldn't be, but like
Yes.
I'm, what I'm I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. So like it blows my mind how many times like I'll speak with a seller and they're still doing most of their business. Either they're just kind of letting it go into QuickBooks and hoping that they'll figure it out, or they have some convoluted spreadsheet that really only makes sense to them. How do you kind of showcase that data and actually present what is profitable? And also, how do you mentioned that you get profitability down to a SKU level. How do you do that? That's, I'm just going to end it
Yes.
there. How do you do
Yes,
that?
yes. Well, it's a very hard problem to solve, and we're trying to fine tune it every single day. But you're absolutely right. What we see most commonly is that first off, QuickBooks is an afterthought. Your accounting is an afterthought because you're looking at it
Mhm.
as a tool for compliance. You're thinking, I need QuickBooks. I need my accounting books to be complete.
Good
I'm going to
point.
hand this off to my bookkeeper, my accountant. It's a bookkeeping activity and they'll take care of the data and that's fine. And to your point, the place that you actually know what's happening is they'll go to each sales channel to see what sort of revenue they got and they'll look at their bank account and say, how much cash do I have? Right. And frankly, this is where most people are under leveraging their accounting and financial system of record because done
Mhm.
right, your financial system should not just be a place where you get compliance, but it's what should be giving you insights as to what you should do next in your business, right? Every month, every quarter, as you close your books, it should give you insight as to what's coming next. Now, there may still be a need for some spreadsheets as you trying to figure out where you want to focus on in your business. But really, what
Yeah.
we do is we provide two complementary solutions. On the one hand, it's the accounting automation products. So basically, you have to basically be able to take the data from your different sales channels and be able to synchronize it so that all of your revenue, all your expenses and fees from all of the different channels are organized. So the bookkeeping piece is done, right? That piece should be just automated. And whether you do it or you work with an accountant, they can help you get all the data flowing. Automation's the piece that you get your books completed with. The second piece is then the analysis. So we have a product we've recently launched. It's called Webgility Intelligence. And that's really a multi-channel analytics app that connects to the same channels that you would with your accounting platform. And it's connecting and bringing in all of the revenue data from your channels. It's dissecting the different fees that are happening at your various payments processor with your shipping app and in your marketplace. And it's pulling in the cost data from your accounting system. So we get a 360-degree view from all of your revenue and your cost information. And that's what gives you the profitability insights. And you can see that
Mm.
profitability all the way from the channel to the order to the item. But it does come back to how strong is your data because frankly, a lot of people don't even enter their costs into their accounting system, which just sort of blows my mind because how do you know your profitability? Because you'll end up putting your cost in your Excel sheet, but you should be generating your POs from your accounting system. You should have all your vendors set up there. You should know what your item costs are. And I
Mhm.
don't think this can all get very complicated, but that's where you got to have your financial systems really well oiled because that's the data. It's sort of like, driving a car without seeing a speedometer, right? Like if you don't know how fast you're driving, how slow you're driving,
Till the cop pulls you over.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, and you sort of need all the gauges, right? Unfortunately, you can't just have one. And so this is why we also partner with a lot of accounting firms and a lot of financial professionals because it's not just about getting your automation set up, but oftentimes it's about getting your books set up right and getting your financial
Mhm.
system really helping you to make better decisions. So yeah, I mean, it's all fairly automated once it's all up and running. But we know that it can be overwhelming. It can be scary sometimes to touch your financial systems and your accounting data, which is frankly one of the reasons why it's a cost for our business. But we provide white glove onboarding to all of our customers. We invest heavily in our customer success teams because you want to be able to get your book set up right and feel confident that all your data is running correctly and you know what's happening. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's not an easy problem, but yeah, you got it done right. It brings tremendous value to our customers.
What about from like a projection standpoint? Because like one of the things that I get this question all the time, someone's asking me like, "Oh, are you a seller yourself?" And I'm always like, "No, like I don't know how you all do it. Inventory scares the crap out of me. Figuring out like because profitability is one thing, but then it's what is your projectable cash flow so that you can actually make sure you have inventory for especially like this time of year where you need to make sure you have enough in stock and So is there any kind of like projection that you map out, or is that something that you kind of turn to and say like, hey, we're feeding this information to, you know, your accountant or something, and that's for something for you all to discuss internally to map that out?
No, I love that you asked that question because we're just in the early days of this, but we do have a forecasting capability in our solution. So Agility Intelligence provides a sales forecast. So it'll actually tell you based on your historic performance, what we can project out as being your sales velocity. And we can also tell you what sort of order volume you're going to be seeing. And we're working on
Nice.
it's early days. I don't want to misspeak, but we're working on a very comprehensive AI driven forecast where you can look into the future and, exactly to your point, be able to forecast your cash flow, figure out when you're going to run out of stock. And with the magic of our application, you'll be able to automatically trigger a purchase order to your vendors so you're not ever going to run out of stock. So, really taking all the thinking out of the planning process and being able to
Mm-hmm.
forecast out what that future looks like. And again, we just launched this product earlier this quarter, actually. So we're really excited, and lots of customers giving us some really great feedback. But for me and for my team, you know, that's the holy grail, right? If we can give you a real accurate picture of where you're making most money and give you an idea of what your profitability looks like, when you're going to run out of stock, and actually automate all of that behind the scenes. We will have taken the heavy lifting of, I think, several different people on staff, and including the business owners, headaches of like, what
Yeah.
does my cash flow look like? Am I ready for the holiday season or any season
What
for
would
that matter?
Dude, any season. What would you say is like when someone first, you know, comes to you guys, they get set up, they're all loaded up, ready to go. What's like one of the first things that you find that they were unaware of until they got set up in WebGility?
The number one place that our customers get a hiccup is their inventory. Most businesses don't start off having a plan for how to organize their inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do invest a lot of our time in just helping them get their SKUs right. It's crazy to me that businesses start off without planning what their SKU names should look like. How do they solve for variance versus options? How do they separate those SKUs by different channels? And how do they record revenue from different channels and expenses and accounts across the different channels so that they know which channel is performing the right way? So it's that initial inventory and that account setup that I find most people overlook. And frankly, I don't blame them. It's just, it's not a recipe for scaling. You end up sort of stitching together different tools and different spreadsheets to just find your way to that $1 million of revenue. And then you end up having to go back in time trying to rectify all of those
To fix it
mistakes
all.
to fix it all. But it, you know, be much better handled and I think set up for success done a little earlier. Um, and yeah, I think those are the typical stumbling blocks is how do you get sort of your accounts and your SKUs set up correctly. That's most of the time, and that's what prevents automation, right? Because your
Mm-hmm.
SKUs aren't matching. You have to create a whole mapping of your catalog. Your accounts are not set up. You have to go reset them up, and then your financials, historical versus forward looking, don't match up correctly. So then you end up sort of looking at your business from a completely new lens. And by the way, once you cross that hump, it's just beautiful, right? Like when
Yeah.
business owners start to see their data that elegantly and really understand what's been happening across their different channels, it's great for them then. But there's that initial kind of hump of getting across. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in that's sort of very common in the marketplace is you have a lot of folks that are touting, hey, don't worry about your accounting system, just package a summary journal entry of like how much income and expenses you had and let's move on. And that just sort of blows my mind. It's like the whole point of your accounting platform is to give you control over your financials, and
Yeah.
and that's a recipe for you need six more tools to do what you really need, which doesn't make sense to me. Like we believe that you should have your accounting system be your system of record that's giving you the insights you need for success. And we layer our solution on top of it, so it complements it really well and gives you all the reporting and forecasting that most systems, including QuickBooks, are not equipped to provide.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's such an interesting insight that's the direction that a lot of them go. What that it's funny you say that, because that $1 million hump seems to be almost incredibly standard across every e-commerce category. No matter, it's like they get to 1 million, and then usually it's around like one, between what I've seen anyway, it's like that 1.5 to 2 million mark is where they finally start digging into their financials, and then all of a sudden it's like a completely different business, and that's what allows them to get to like that $5-10 million mark a year, and scaling from there. What is an ideal customer of Webgility? Do you kind of suggest like, hey, start from the beginning, or is it more of a, once you get up and running and you're on a bunch of different marketplaces and things like that, then it's a little bit more understandable?
Yeah, our I would say our sweet spot is around the $500,000 to $1 million revenue mark, and goes all the way up to
Mm-hmm.
about 50 million. Now we have even larger customers on the platform, but that's usually the sweet spot. And to your point about that 1 million hump, or the $500,000 or so, it's really when you're going from it, being a side hustle to becoming a real business, right?
Yeah.
You're working and grinding likely at a full-time business and doing an e-commerce business on the side until you really start to see that register, the ding. And then once those sales come in and you can get past that $500,000 mark, the dream becomes real. And we see,
Yeah.
business owners kind of becoming business owners instead of thinking of it as just a side gig. And that's when they start to establish systems. And by the way, this is all natural, and it totally makes sense. You don't start a business to create operational systems. you, you don't,
Preach.
right? So, you're trying to build a business, you're trying to feed your family, you're trying to, establish a career for yourself. And so it totally makes sense to figure out your path. And which is why, we definitely, I mean, in fact, we have a blog post where, I think I wrote it, and it's probably just in pre-production here. It should be launched soon, but we talk about using free tools and when it totally makes sense. And really, when you're getting started, there's a number of free tools. In fact, QuickBooks itself
Mm-hmm.
offers free integration tools to various shopping carts and channels. And by the way, I'm a total fan of, when you're starting early, use the free tools, figure out what's going to get you going, and find your footing, figure out where your business is headed, then really start to operationalize and invest in tools. It totally makes sense. I mean, I did it myself early days, right? I mean, 15 years ago, we got started. We didn't have a full technology stack. And today, we've got Salesforce, Pardot, Intercom, you name it, right? Like all the major
Yeah.
key tools. And it's a big line item in our expenses. But that's you hit that when you hit scale. But early days, there's a lot of free tools out there. But I will say, the moment and this is also sort of a personal choice for a lot of sellers, when they decide to go from a single channel to multi-channel. Um, but things are a lot easier when you're selling just in one channel.
Yeah.
Even as hard as Amazon makes it to like really operationally manage with Seller Central, it is still much easier when you just have one channel to focus on. But the moment you diversify to two channels, free tools don't really cut it. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot do things on Excel. Manual doesn't work because it's funny. I have two kids, and it's like two is not equals two. It's a problem, just is like exponential. So, yeah, the moment you get more than one channel, you want to really think about tools and automation, and that's where sort of our sweet spot is as well. Is that's when we can really help sellers kind of bring everything together, because then we normalize things, right? You look at one dashboard, you look at one set of reports, you see one order stream of all your channels, you see one expense, and
Mm-hmm.
then we elegantly categorize everything and put it into the right bucket, so you kind of know which channel is what and where you made your money and what's working, what's not working.
Yeah. It's really funny that you say that. I never even thought about that, of, leveraging the free tools and all that kind of stuff. Like when you're on one platform, it's usually pretty easy. like even our approach with it from a marketing side, which in my eyes is almost like the complete opposite end of the spectrum of what you're working on. You're making sure that we're doing our job right. But as soon as like we talk about all the time about going omni-channel and, you know, being on multiple marketplaces, developing your own website and starting to build your own brand and everything. But every time we speak to specifically like Amazon sellers that are doing, you know, a couple $1 million a year, they're like, all right, let's make a website and then we'll just start making money there. I'm like, no, it does not work that way. You're starting over from scratch. So let's use the free stuff and ease into this and see what that process is. It's pretty funny that it's the same way on your end. I never even kind of thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also just say like I find with sellers they make the decision to go multi-channel too quickly, right? Because they haven't necessarily maximized what they can achieve on a single channel before they go out hunting for new. And especially if you're a brand, it's sort of a no-brainer. You kind of have to have a website, right? You need to build an audience and build a repeatable kind of base that you can market to. But for e-com only sellers, I mean, you know, you can maximize what you're doing on a marketplace and double down on strategies that are working. There are tons of great tools, as you probably know better than I, on how to find new products and sell more solutions. If you can kind of build that repeatability with that single channel, that's, I think, a better recipe instead of really taking on the burden of additional channels before you've really fine-tuned your single channel business. But yeah, it's different approaches out there, and certainly depends on kind of the skill set and expertise. And you know, I've been following you know, your podcast, and yeah, I mean, you guys have had some great content around how do you really optimize marketing, how do you build your brand, and you know, how you fine tune your marketing and advertising spend. I think it's really, really insightful and valuable for your audience.
Appreciate that. Great way to end it. Parag, really appreciated having you on the show. Standard, normal, fun stuff at the end of any show. I'd love to give you opportunity, let everyone know where they can find out more about you and, of course, Webgility.
Yeah, absolutely. Just visit webgility.com, and I'm on all the social channels. If you can't type in my name, just look me up, Parag at Webgility. And yeah, I would love to interact with any seller that's out there. And, you know, we have folks listening and available on our website to address any questions and help figure out how we can help you scale.
Beautiful. Appreciate it, boy. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks so much.
Obviously, everyone that tuned in. Yeah, everyone that tuned in, thank you as well. Please make sure, usual, rate, review, subscribe on whichever podcast platform you want, or YouTube, or just head over to ecommshow.com. But if not, as usual, we will see you all next time. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ecomm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The Ecomm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of The Ecomm Show.